Welcome back to Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr.Toni G. Alvarado. I'm so glad that you are here with us for another month of conversations here on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. We have had a wonderful year already. We've spoken to some amazing women, had conversations and hosted conversations with some amazing women. We started out the year reflecting on the 3 years that this podcast has been in existence. In the month of January, we hosted a podcast talk back, and I invite you to go back to my YouTube channel at Dr. Toni G. Alvarado, and you can view that conversation there where we had a host of women who have previously been guests on our podcast talking about the issues of self-care, health, wellness, fitness, and all the things that make for a harmonious lifestyle. Then in the month of February, we spoke with with Debrina Jackson Gandy, and we also talked with um, um, R. Monica May, Robin May, and it's been an intriguing month already. Then in the month of March, we dealt with heart changing the narrative on heart disease and women's history. And so we talked with Georgia State Representative Doreen Carter and with Dr. Jane Morgan, who's a cardiologist. And so we're going to continue our conversations through the month of April. And I am glad to have a wonderful woman who's going to kick off our April series. She is no stranger to this podcast because she's been a speaker and a presenter and conversationalist on this podcast in previous years. And I've invited her back. And that is in the person of Dr. Keisha V. Thompson. And we'll be right back right after this with our April, kicking off our April series with Dr. Thompson in just a moment. Be right back. Well, I'm glad to have my sister in the podcast studio with us today. Dr. Keisha V. Thompson is an associate professor of psychology at Kingsborough Community College, City University of New York. She is also the co-creator and co-director of the historically unrepresented faculty and staff resource center at Kingsborough. Dr. Thompson holds a doctorate in counseling psychology from Texas A&M University. She is a native of Trinidad and Tobago. She grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and completed her bachelor's degree in business communication at Baruch College, CUNY, and her master's degree in school counseling at Hunter College, CUNY. Her clinical experience includes college counseling, community health, mental health, the federal prison system, VA medical center, and various K through 12 school settings. Her professional interests include diversity issues in higher education, themes of psychosocial development, and mental health in Black youth and in women. As a first generation immigrant and college graduate, it is important to Dr. Thompson that her work addresses issues of cultural diversity. As such, fostering diversity is the focus of her scholarship, teaching, and service to her community. In the classroom, she operates from a socio-political framework, which allows her to address issues of culture, health, and justice as they relate to individuals and institutions. Her research agenda centers around Blackness in the African diaspora, and she enjoys spending time in the classroom and community, empowering individuals through expanding their knowledge base and encouraging them to be change agents in society. There alone, the Women of Trinidad and Tobago 1970 Black Power is her first film project. Dr. Thompson also hosts two podcasts, Misadventures of Inspired Women, of an Inspired Woman, which highlights personal goals and achievements in women, and Black and Saved, aimed at fostering community at the intersection of Blackness and Christianity. In her spare time, she enjoys singing and convening spaces where women can come together to provide encouragement, share ideas, and build community. And I'm excited to be sharing space with her today on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. Please help me welcome my sister and my friend, Dr. Keisha V. Thompson. Welcome, sis.
Thank you, Dr. Toni. I gotta get a shorter bio to you.
It's okay.
It's
It's
too
okay.
long.
I wanted to read all of it because you deserve all of it. Amen. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. It's good to see you celebrating all that you've been doing.
Three
And I'm
years we've been doing this
Yes,
podcast. Can you believe it?
yeah, three
I,
years.
I think you did. You come on in the first year or the second year?
It must have been the second year because it would have to been 21.
21. Okay, so first
Yeah.
2020. So we just in March 2nd celebrated officially 3 years was our anniversary, March 2nd. So now we're in the fourth year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for being a part of this community and not just coming on the podcast, but we've connected now. I have fond memories of when I came to Brooklyn in 2021, right shortly after my mom passed. And I came there as a part of my grief therapy just to get away and walked across the Brooklyn Bridge while I was there, but had an opportunity to spend a wonderful evening with you over dinner, and walking through the streets of Brooklyn that evening was so much fun and special.
It was a good time. I love showing you my Brooklyn. I must say my city because New York City is, the whole city, but I love showing off Brooklyn to people because it's a great place and I
It
had a
really is.
great time
One
with
of my
you.
favorite places in the world is Brooklyn, New York. Wow. And when we were together there, like I said, it was on the heels of my mom's passing. And
Hmm.
part of my grief journey that year, I was on a sabbatical and I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before. And my goal was to go places that I hadn't been to visit and then go to places that I had visited, but do something different. And I've always wanted to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. And so I got a chance to do that while I was there. And you took me to see the promenade that night, and it was just so beautiful. It was just good to connect. And what's really interesting is that was our first face to face meeting.
Yes, yes, but it didn't feel like it.
No, it didn't. And we actually, how did we meet? We met online, right? I
Yeah,
think
I think.
I reached out to you because I saw you on Instagram. And I was like, oh yeah, I gotta have her on the podcast. And when I reached out to you about coming, you immediately said yes. And we just hit it off from there.
Yeah, it was an easy yes. It was an easy yes, to say yes to another Black woman, particularly another Black woman of faith. It was an easy yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And so we share this common work of empowering women through our teaching. You're in the classroom, I'm in the pulpit and the classroom. Um, you're doing podcasts, I'm doing podcasts. We both have our own blogs that we write and following of women that follow us. And so talk to us about today. We're going to be talking about self-acceptance and self-grace, right?
Hmm.
And so I want to, based on your work, Dr. Keisha, your work, we talked about your work and your agenda around around empowering and addressing issues of diversity, cultural diversity.
Hmm.
And so you and I both know in our community, particularly with Black women, there are a lot of issues around self-acceptance and self-grace. So from a sociological, psychological standpoint, start there with what you know about that, and then maybe share a little bit of your own motivation and why you are involved in this work of motivating and empowering and educating, particularly women of color.
Hmm. You know, last week I was teaching a lesson, and it was one of the intro lessons that I do, where we talk about the different areas of psychology. And one of the areas that we cover is social psychology. And I try to bring in as much as possible whenever I teach. And so I always talk about Kenneth and Mamie Clark, which these are the folks who did the doll studies. And a lot of folks are familiar with the doll studies, right?
Right, right.
And these were two psychologists who, you know, I believe in the 50s, they had these little kids that were 5 and 6 years old, and they showed them a black doll and a white doll, and they asked them, which doll is the good doll, which doll is the nice doll, which doll, you know, is ugly, which doll is bad, which
Yeah.
doll looks like you. And these 5 and 6 year olds overwhelmingly chose the white doll as the good doll, the pretty doll, the nice doll. And the doll that was ugly and that was bad and that they knew looked like them was the black doll. And
Hmm.
that let us know that at a very young
That's
age,
such a
children,
heartbreaking study.
yeah, yeah, and they do it every couple of years, and the same thing happens. The results never change, haven't changed yet, right?
Wow.
And it's it's a study that really shows us that at a very young age we start internalizing messages about ourselves,
Hmm.
for better or worse. And in
Hmm.
this case, for worse. And the reason why I tell my students this is so important, beyond it being heartbreaking and all these other things, is this information was submitted to the Supreme Court for the Brown v. Board of Ed decision, right? And so if you ever read the decision on Brown v. Board of Ed, which just desegregated schools, you'll see reference made to this study,
Wow.
right?
Mhm.
And so that whole idea
So, in
of,
other words, laws and policies
mhm,
have been based on, and systems have been built based on this study.
right.
Hmm.
So we can point to this particular instance with this particular decision with that
Okay.
study, right? And it informs a lot of work, the work that Black psychologists do. It informs a lot of what we understand about identity, about how people feel about themselves, how
Mhm.
people feel about their color, how people feel about their hair texture. And so this whole idea of understanding who you are and accepting who you are starts at a very young age. And
Mhm.
so we can certainly think about and talk about how it impacts us as women today. And I also want us to think about the young lives that we're entrusted with, either in our families or in our communities, in our churches, and how we may or may not be feeding into that. And really, how are we modeling this?
Okay. Wow. So let's unpack that.
Hmm.
Let's unpack that. So, how is this showing up in our community? What are you seeing? How is this impacting our whole self-image and how we see ourselves? Where where's that leading? What is that informing? How is that shaping our decisions and our behavior, our choices?
So, we know that colorism is a thing in our community, right?
Mhm.
And we even know, like, it gets ridiculous sometimes that, power is attached to skin color, right? And then sometimes we'll even turn it around on folks who might even be fairer skin. Like, a lot of times folks think, and it's true, a lot of the darker skinned people might get picked on, might get called this or
Yeah.
that. But then there's just this constant back and forth about what is black, what's not black, what's red, what's yellow, all this other foolishness.
Mhm.
And ultimately, people are walking around um, just wanting to be. Like Black is not a monolith. It's not a one story. It's not a one look, right? And so what that's doing is it's impeding people from celebrating who they are and embracing who they are, and then just creating divisiveness where we just really don't need it, right?
And that's one of the reasons why I really prefer the term women of color or people of color um over just saying black. And the reason I do that is because I do think it is not a monolith. And it's not just, we're not all the same just because we're African American or whatever, or that we're from the African diaspora. Doesn't make us all the same. There are cultures within cultures.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think at the end of the day, where we really need to put our energy and our resources is about um, celebrating our diversity and celebrating, that we are beautiful people,
Yeah.
and really showing that you love yourself,
Hmm.
to the younger generation,
Yeah.
because they're picking up on things.
Yeah.
I always have this memory of when my hair was straightened, and it was just like really long hair. And I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. And I'd grown it out. And I went to my sister's house and I asked her to cut it. I had enough of my curly hair to leave it out,
Hmm.
right? So I didn't have the two textures. So that was my big chop moment. And I remember I went to my sister's house. I was like, can you just, and my nieces were like, I don't know, they were maybe about 5 or 6 at the time. And they had to have been older than that.
Okay.
Maybe they were about 10, I don't know. But they were just like, "What are you doing? People wanna have hair like yours. It's not gonna be beautiful." Like, they were just, like, distraught,
Wow.
right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "It's okay.
It's
It's
just
fine.
hair.
It's fine. It'll grow back." And they're in their 20s now, and they're fine wearing their hair straight, curly, braided, whatever, right? Um, and I really feel like it's because within the family, we didn't, or at least within my generation, we made a decision that this is how we were going to be. And we really weren't going to let the younger generation feel badly about it. And we were going to walk with pride.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and the next generation is going to see it, and that allows them to walk with pride.
mhm, mhm, mhm. I did a thing, I I wanna say it might have been 2021. I did a episode, called "You Are Not Your Hair," and we talked about that whole natural hair versus straight hair, and a lot of us now wearing natural, for me, I started wearing my natural hair in the pandemic, and I love it. I had someone ask me recently, "So are you gonna ever go back to your perm?" And I was like, "Probably not." If I wanted to, I don't want to. Here's the thing: if I decide to do it, fine. But I don't think so. I don't think I want to. At this juncture, I don't want to. Um,
And
but
wanting to or not is not an indictment on your blackness, right?
right,
Like,
right. So if I decide to do it, fine. If I decide not to do it, fine. But I think that and that's all a part of that identity politics, whether or not I'm gonna straighten my hair, whether I'm wear straight, I'm wear permed, whatever, weaved. Um, and it's okay, whichever one you decide to do. I think the issue is at that core internal sense of whether or not I'm good enough, I'm worthy, I belong. I think those are the issues at the core of self acceptance.
hmm hmm I
Yeah.
think I think the whole idea of being worthy and belong, I think we need to interrogate that, because worthy of what, worthy of who, and belong where,
Mm,
right?
say that.
And
Hey, slow down. Oh, Lord, you just dropped something. Okay. Worthy of what?
worthy of who and belong where.
Worthy of who and belong where? Oh, Come on, unpack it.
Because you know, I remember struggling in my graduate program because I was like, these folks don't like me. And I'm hardly ever a type of person to be bothered if people like me or not.
Uh-huh.
As I say, it's as a result of coming from a large family. I have built-in friends. So
Mhm.
if everything else fails, like we're friends forever, right? My family members. Um, and so I remember talking to my mentor about, being in the classroom and saying certain things, and just culturally I did not fit in, and
Mm.
my experiences just didn't fit with the folks I was around, and I was like, well, they don't always agree with me, and he was like, why are you looking for validation from people who don't have it to give to you,
Mm.
right? So a lot of times we're looking for acceptance from people who they're not worth the power that we're giving to them.
And you know what? What's interesting about that is sometimes I have found we are looking for acceptance from people who haven't even accepted themselves.
And they really don't have anything to give to you. They have no cachet. They have, they might have some perceived power in a particular setting, but
Mhm.
it's limited to that, right? And
Right.
so when I think about, where we want to fit in, it's one of the things that I tell my students, and it's one of the decisions I came to, using the hair example. There was a time where I was straightening my hair out to go on a job interview. And then it just came to a point where, like, this is how I wear my hair. And if I go into this environment and this is not okay, then it's not an environment that I need to be
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
in.
you.
So, one of the great things about when I was transitioning with my hair was that the woman who was the director of the place I was at, she was doing the same thing.
Mm.
And she was very encouraging. And sometimes I might have encountered Black people who were not encouraging about me wearing my hair like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes back to that whole sort of like internalized racism and them not accepting themselves,
Internalized racism. Say that.
right?
Say that.
So that a lot of times the racism that we experience in the world, we turn around and we accept it and we believe it. And
Mm,
so then we turn around and we treat people according to these same values,
mm, mm, mm,
right?
mm,
Which is people that look just like you. You
mhm,
accept certain behaviors because you've internalized these values to be true,
mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
And so a lot of times when we think about self-acceptance, you really it really goes back to your identity in Christ, and your
Okay.
identity in who you are apart from Christ. And I know sometimes folks don't necessarily want to hear that, but at the end of the day, you're walking around in a world where people don't see Christ stamped on your head. Sometimes they'll have the opportunity to see him in your actions,
Mm,
but most times they don't.
mm.
And sometimes,
Yeah.
quite frankly, they're not looking for him either, right? So,
I hear you. I hear you.
so you're a Black woman, you're a woman of color, you're a Black man, and that's how the world experiences you, and that's how you show up in the world. And
Yeah.
do you embrace that? It's very real that there are people within our communities that bleach their skin,
Yeah. It is.
right? It's
Yeah.
very real that there are people in our communities that put in colored contacts, and their hair has to be straight, not because they feel like wearing their hair straight today, but because they believe that that is the standard of beauty,
Oh, come on. Talk about the
right?
standard of beauty. Beauty.
So,
Yes. Where does
so
our standard of beauty come from? And who defines that?
I mean, it goes back to the conversation we started about with those 5 and 6-year-old kids. Where were they getting these ideas from? They're
Mhm,
seeing it in TV, they're seeing it in magazines, they're seeing it on
mhm,
billboards, now
mhm,
they're seeing it on the internet. the little comments that family members may make, like, don't stay out in the sun. Why does your nose look like that? Why do your lips look like that? You got nappy hair. Like, it's little comments that people are making that are amounting to a lot. And that's amounting to how people are seeing themselves.
Wow.
Right. And so you have to see, you don't have to, but it's very beneficial to see the beauty in the curl of your hair, to see the beauty in the broadness of your nose and the thickness of your lips. And guess what? If you are a Black person that doesn't have stereotypical African features, it's okay, because what we think are stereotypical African features are not. Everybody looks different everywhere,
Everywhere, all over the globe.
all over, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's about recognizing this is who you are and this is who God created you to be.
It's about, so self-acceptance and self is about recognizing who I am and accepting that this is who God created me to be.
This is who God created me to be.
It's for a purpose. I remember when I was growing up, I didn't like the fact that I was dark skinned, because I remember I had a white girl come up to me, and uh, we were children, like you said, with the doll thing. And we were in a store, and her mother, she pointed at me and started crying. And when her mother asked her what was wrong, she said, "She's Black." And I internalized that for years. And so growing up, I was, something's wrong with me. I'm too dark. I'm this, that, and other. And I just came into a realization. I was grown, like in my 30s, when I finally was okay with the fact that I'm dark skinned and I love it. And then when I started preaching, um, and doing itinerant ministry, a lot of my preaching, when I started traveling in ministry, I started traveling to places like Trinidad and Tobago, where you're from, in Barbados, and in the Caribbean. I would go and preach. And the women that I would end up preaching, when I would go and I would preach, afterwards, the women would come up to me and they would go, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful. You look like us." And I realized I'm this color because God created me to be. And there are women like that look at me and see God through and in and through me. They hear the voice of God through the preaching, and because not just because of what they hear here, but because of what they see. And so I really began to accept this is who God created me to be. I remember
Mhm.
when I had to, I mean, you couldn't talk to me about my hair being not being permed and straight. I mean, I would go through all kind of contortions to get to the hair salon to get my hair done. People that know me know that, right? She gonna get her hair done, and I used to say, if I die between touch ups, y'all make sure y'all get me a touch up and don't lay me out there where everybody look at me with my head nappy. All the stuff that we said and we internalized, and I didn't realize until that I was self sabotaging
Mm,
in some of those things, in the way I was thinking and what I was saying.
mhm. It's important. It's really important, the narrative that you have for yourself. And
Yeah.
a lot of us are walking around with narratives that don't serve us. We think it serves us because it keeps us safe. It
Uh,
keeps us from being hurt. It keeps us being able to expect the blow that's coming our way. And the narratives are just not, it's just not helpful. And it's also not healthy,
no, it's not.
right?
It
And
is.
so it's really important. Yes, there were things that may have been said to you as a child and even as a grown woman in this society, but you now have a choice as to what things you accept into the narrative that is you, that is your life, as well as to how you speak to and about yourself. And that's where grace comes in.
I was going to say, so talk to us about, is there a difference between self acceptance and self grace?
Yeah, I think self-acceptance is like, I know who I am, this is who I am, right?
Hmm.
And grace is giving yourself freedom, right? It's, you know, it's recognizing, like, here are these things about me. Some of them are great, and some of them are not so great because God got to have something to work on us with, right? and, and I know a lot of us think our stuff don't stink, but it just
We all got areas of growth. I call them
right.
growth opportunities.
That's that. See, that's spoken as a woman of grace, right?
Right.
Um, because you're like, okay, this is not the best thing about me, but I can improve it,
Mhm.
right?
Learn from
Or it's
growth.
just gonna be a shortcoming of mine. Like it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be vulnerable.
It's okay to be imperfect. I love that. I love the way you said that. It's
Yeah,
okay.
like
We can put that on a
it's
T-shirt. It's okay to be imperfect. Or what's the song that's out with Tasha Cobbs? Gracefully Broken.
mm, yeah.
Mhm.
So I um I had this therapist that was working with me on some stuff, and I can be incredibly hard on myself, but I've gotten better at it. And one of the things was I have this thing that I would always say, and I found myself saying it the other day, and I stopped myself, right? I always would say, one day I'm gonna get my life together, right? And the other day I found myself saying it because the past 6 months I sort of uprooted. I was traveling around, my things were in storage. I moved into a new place. I'm still unpacking boxes,
Mhm.
you know, and I said, oh, one day I'm gonna get myself together. And I said, wait a minute, I don't say that anymore. Oh no, no, no. I'm doing the best that I can. And it's
Oh,
okay.
I'm doing the best. That's self-grace.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best.
Cause it's a hot mess right over there, right? If I unblurred this thing, Dr. Tony, it is a hot mess back there. Okay. But you know what? I was able to find myself somewhere to live. I
And you
was
know this podcast.
listen, I'm able to sit on my couch. I actually had to have the couch cleaned. Um, I was so proud of myself when I scheduled that and I negotiated with the moving company that they had to pay for half of it. They really should have paid for all of it, but I just didn't have it in me to keep going back and forth with them.
Okay, okay.
Um, I've been sleeping in my own bed the past couple weeks. The bed is set up. I got my computer set up now. Progress is being made. It's still chaotic over here. I probably can't have anybody over that I'm not close with right now, right? Uh, but progress is being made, and I shouldn't sit here and be like, oh, I don't have it together. I gotta have it together. Because can I tell you, in the midst of all of this, I've been going to work and teaching my students and having meetings and setting up programs.
You're doing wonderful, honey.
I'm doing a lot. Like I told you last night, I didn't go to sleep. And this is not a regular practice of mine. I did this in grad school and I stopped doing it. Um, I was up till about 4 this morning and then I was up again at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, right? Because I was working on something. The things weren't working. The computer didn't want to do what I needed it to do. All these different things were happening. But you know
But
what?
you're here.
I'm here and I finally figured out the thing and I sent it off to where it needed to be sent off to. And there are all these things things are happening. So how dare I sit here
Mm,
and tell myself that I'm not doing enough or I'm not being good enough? Like that's not acceptable.
oh my God. But how many of us do that? I mean, we don't, we look at, so what we do is what happens is we look at one thing that may not be like we want it to be in
Hmm.
our lives or what we may call out of order.
Yeah.
But we don't look at the nine other things that we're doing a darn good job at.
And you know what? Some of that comes from a lot of different places, but some of it can come from our families of origin
Yeah.
where we weren't told, hey, you're doing a good job,
Hmm.
right? All you were probably told is what you're doing wrong.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a parent is working so hard and a kid runs up to the parent, it's like, look what I did. And they're like, did you wash the dishes? Like, we have all these stories, right? Of people, like your parents waking you up out of your sleep to
Yeah,
wash the
yeah, yeah.
dishes.
They got all
Or
those
like,
TikToks right now. You, if you of your mama, and listen, I showed it to my kids. They said, "Mom, this is you. You go if it's a dish in the sink, y'all getting up and washing these dishes, and it's what the TikTok, and it's one
right,
glass in the sink."
in the
Yeah,
sink.
yeah,
Or, you know, don't you get out here and embarrass me.
mhm, yeah.
Or look at what such and such kid is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a lot of those things that sort of produces that narrative that we have, that no matter what we do, we're not good enough and we're not doing enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other piece of it is, um, part of our sort of Christian, you got to work hard for Jesus to love you.
Mm.
You gotta do all these things or he's not gonna
Theology.
love you.
Oh my God, our theology definitely has us messed up. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think those are two main things that sort of lead people down this road. And you know, at the end of the day, God extends grace to us,
Mm-hmm.
and we should accept it.
And we should extend grace to
We
ourselves
we should extend grace to ourselves,
and to
right?
each other. And to each other.
And to each other. And you know, I think we've kind of figured out how to extend grace to each other a little bit. Like we can still be a little judgy. Uh, like I can't. Did you see her? I can't believe. You know, the clutching of the pearls.
Oh,
Um, but
but we
we'll for
are, we tend to, I hear where you're going. We tend to give more grace to other people
than to
than we
ourselves.
do ourselves. And why do we do that?
Um, because if we were to extend grace to ourselves, again, it's admitting that we're imperfect.
Mm, mm,
It's admitting that we're imperfect. It's also sometimes going to a very painful place
mhm, mhm,
when we realize how much unforgiveness
mm,
we have for ourselves.
mm.
And you know,
Mm,
that's why therapy is important,
yeah, yeah.
you
That's,
know, to help us unpack some of these things. And, you know, it's about being kind to yourself. I always would ask the question to people. People pride themselves on being a good friend,
mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
And so I would always ask the question, if you were a friend to you,
What?
would you consider yourself a good friend?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you talk kindly to yourself? Are you there for yourself?
Showing up for yourself. Yeah, yeah. That's good. Those are good
And
questions.
and honestly and truthfully, until and unless we learn how to really show up for ourselves and how to be kind to ourselves, the way we show up for others and the kindness we extend to others, it's tainted.
It is. It is. Because we
Mhm.
really cannot love others unless we love ourselves.
Mhm.
That's Jesus
Mhm.
said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. You can't really love your neighbor if you have issues of self acceptance and self grace
Yeah.
because we project.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's tainted. Wow,
Mhm.
thank you. Listen, we could talk all day, but I know you've been up and you need to get some rest. And so I just wanted to I want us to have this conversation. And I don't know, in May I'm going to do a podcast talk back. Every 3 months I do a podcast talk back, so I'll get with you about coming on to the podcast talk back. And what will happen with that is we'll stream it out live, and you'll come into the studio, you and a couple and all of the guests that we have on, and then we will actually be able to dialogue with each other and take questions from the audience, and
Mhm.
really interact with those that are listening to our podcast. And I'm grateful. I know we were originally trying to get you earlier this year, but you were in at home in Trinidad, And so, but I'm so grateful that everything worked out for you to be with us to kick off our April series. And I just believe that you said some things today that will help at least, I don't expect people to get everything they need in a 30-minute conversation on a podcast,
Mhm.
right? But hopefully we said something today that has enlightened someone to, at least if they're struggling with self acceptance or self grace, that they'll go get therapy or seek out someone that can help them in this area. And then just a reminder to all of us, because even when we think that we've gotten it together in this area, we're not, like you said, we're not perfect.
Mhm.
And we, every now and then, we have to check our own self talk. I was talking, Robin May last month, in when we were talking with her in February. She talked about self-talk, and she said, what are the messages? What are the things you're saying to yourself? And every now and then, we all need to check ourselves to see what, like you said, you found yourself saying, I need to get, when I get myself together, or I need to get my life together. And you're like, no, I don't say that anymore. But every now and then we have to really lasso those thoughts, which produce the words that come out of our mouths,
Mhm.
which eventually produces our actions,
Mhm.
right? And so thank you for reminding us of what it means to really have self acceptance and to walk in self grace. I want to, before you give us a final word, I want to let people know where they can find you. I'm going to put your information for those of you who are listening to this podcast. I want you to know you are listening to the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self Care for Women of Color podcast with Dr. Toni Alvarado. You can find this podcast on Anchor, Podcast, Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you are not on my YouTube channel, please, ma'am, please, sir, go to my YouTube channel and subscribe and share this conversation, or all the conversations that are cataloged there. Go there, like and subscribe our YouTube channel, because when you do so, you allow us to come up higher up in the Google search and analytics when people are looking for information, for positive information and inspiration, and on self care, health, wellness, fitness, mental health, self acceptance, self worth, self talk, all the things that we talk about on this podcast. When you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you ensure that we come up in the analytics when people are searching for these type of conversations and information, inspiration, and then it's readily available to them. They don't have to search 3 or 4 pages down in Google. We'll be higher up in those analytics when you engage us on the YouTube channel. So thank you, ma'am. I'm thanking you in advance, ma'am and sir, for subscribing to our podcast. I also want you to know, women, that you can join the Harmonize Your Life Self-Care Network. You can go to my website at drtonyalvarado.com. Go to my website at drtonyalvarado.com. There's a link there for the Self-Care Network. Join it, click it, join it, so that you can be a part of a network of women that we have gathered, that are from all over this country, and some even outside of the country, who have connected to this network. When you go there and join, you're able to be a part of helping us to produce this podcast, but you're also privy to other self-care events that I host, i.e. Tea Time with Dr. Toni, our yoga, Monday night yoga group, our deep breathing classes, and different things that we host. You get information, you get firsthand information, and availability to our self-care retreat that we host, the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Retreat. We're on our way to Jamaica next year. And when you're a part of the network, you're able to be a part and get that information easily and readily, and you get firsthand or first opportunity to be a part of the things that we are doing in the self-care network. Also, go there and purchase your Harmony Fitness apparel. Go there, purchase your Harmony Fitness apparel. You can get that there. You can purchase your Harmony tea. You can purchase your Harmony herbal oil. All the stuff that we have on our website. When you go there, you'll be able to take advantage of that. We are talking today to Dr. Keisha V. Thompson. We're talking about self-acceptance and self-grace. And you can follow Dr. Keisha at Dr. Keisha on Facebook, on IG at Dr. underscore Keisha, and on Twitter at Dr. K. Thompson. Doctor spelled out K. Thompson. K for Keisha Thompson. And you can also go to her YouTube channel at Dr. Keisha. YouTube at Dr. Keisha. Dr. Keisha, will you just give us one last word of encouragement as we prepare to sign off on today?
Like I said, we God made us the way we needed to be made. He, when we were little, they would always say, God don't make junk, right? And so you are not here by accident. You are not who you are by accident. And so when we learn to embrace ourselves and accept ourselves for who God made us to be, it makes it that we're being obedient to Him. It makes our lives a little bit easier because we're able to walk in the fullness of who we are. Go easy on yourself. You don't have to be perfect. Love on yourself and speak kindly to yourself.
Go easy on yourself. You do not have to be perfect. Be kind to yourself and operate in self acceptance and self grace. Thank you so much, sis. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that this conversation is blessing everybody that is listening on today. We'll have you back on again real.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk real soon. Thank you again.
Okay.
And listen, we'll see you all for another episode in the month of April. We're having Dr. Keisha the first 2 weeks of April, and then we have another guest that we'll have on, and I'll let you know who that will be next time when you come back into the Harmonize Your Life podcast with your host, Dr. Toni G. Alvarado. We'll see you soon.